En un mundo con tantas obligaciones no hay mucho tiempo para estudiar las nuevas vacunas que se van agregando al calendario de vacunación. Entonces hemos elaborado una breve guía práctica para ver cuáles son las más convenientes. Para empezar tenemos que buscar el calendario de vacunación de nuestro país, que generalmente está online. Hemos seleccionado el de Estados Unidos por ser el país que está presionando para este aumento de vacunas a nivel mundial. Veamos el calendario. Para empezar, al nacimiento se administra la primera dosis de la vacuna contra hepatitis B y en muchos casos la de vitamina K. Comencemos por estas para darnos una idea de cómo hacer nuestra propia investigación. Entonces, lo primero que nos preguntamos es, ¿para qué se la administra? ¿Qué marcas son las más seguras? ¿Qué efectos colaterales o eventos adversos tienen? ¿Y qué ingredientes tienen y si son seguros? No hace falta ser ni científico ni experto para poder verificar esto. Comencemos por el primer punto. ¿Para qué se inyecta la vacuna de hepatitis B a un bebé recién nacido? La vacuna de hepatitis B es para gente con vida sexual activa, con varias parejas y para drogadictos que se inyectan drogas. Si la madre no tiene hepatitis B, entonces según expertos no tiene sentido aplicar esta vacuna que contiene además 250 microgramos de aluminio. Pasemos a la segunda cuestión, que es ¿qué marcas hay y cuáles son las más seguras? Para esto accedemos al sitio de la Administración de Alimentos y Medicamentos de los Estados Unidos, fda.gov. Luego hacemos clic en este link, Vacuna, Sangre y Biológicos. Y luego en Vacunas. Y en esta nueva página hacemos clic en Productos aprobados y finalmente clic en Vacunas con licencias en Estados Unidos. Y finalmente entramos en la sección con la lista de todas las vacunas autorizadas por este ente oficial. Elegimos cualquiera de ellas. En este caso elegimos Engerix por tener menos cantidad de aluminio que otras. Ya veremos este tema a continuación. Hacemos clic sobre Engerix y nos lleva a las especificaciones de esta vacuna. Hacemos clic nuevamente sobre Insert, que sería el prospecto de la misma, que podemos leer completamente, pero hay dos secciones que tenemos que prestar atención, que son la experiencia post-marketing y la descripción. Acá estamos en la experiencia post-marketing. Podemos ver los informes de eventos adversos que se han reportado en el banco de datos de eventos adversos de las vacunas llamado VAERS. En este caso veremos algunos de los eventos adversos que esta vacuna ya ha causado: herpes zóster, artritis, encefalitis, múltiple esclerosis, síndrome de Guillain-Barré, que es un tipo de parálisis, convulsiones, síncope, mielitis transversa, vértigo, palpitaciones, taquicardia, artritis y solo mencionamos algunas. Pasamos al otro punto importante, que es la descripción, en donde podemos ver ingredientes y sobre todo la cantidad de aluminio en esta vacuna. En este caso son 0.25 miligramos, que si lo convertimos a microgramos serían 250 microgramos, dado que el límite es de 20 microgramos para un niño de 4 kilos. Esta vacuna tiene 12 veces más los niveles permitidos de aluminio, que es neurotóxico, de acuerdo a la Administración de Alimentos y Medicamentos, como veremos más adelante. Por último, veamos esta sección en donde están las restricciones para casos como mujeres embarazadas, en donde queda claro que no hay estudios realizados. Ahora pasamos a la vacuna de vitamina K, que se inyecta al bebé recién nacido para que haya coagulación y detener hemorragias internas o sangrado externo. Antes que nada veamos el prospecto en el sitio pfizerinyectables.com. Nos vamos al link más abajo que dice Insert y lo primero que nos encontramos es con una advertencia muy grave. La traducción dice así: se han producido reacciones graves, incluyendo fatalidades, durante e inmediatamente después de la inyección phytonadione vitamina K. Luego, más abajo, tiene una segunda advertencia que dice: advertencia. El alcohol bencílico como conservante en la inyección de cloruro de sodio bacteriostático ha sido asociado con toxicidad en recién nacidos. No hay datos disponibles sobre toxicidad de otros conservantes en esta edad grupo. Luego, a continuación, hay una tercera advertencia que dice: advertencia, este producto contiene aluminio que puede ser tóxico. Acá vemos que en la etiqueta dice que tiene 100 microgramos de aluminio, es decir, 5 veces más el límite permitido. Ver link abajo con los límites máximos permisibles o el video que citamos anteriormente en sanrafael.club. Si vamos al buscador y ponemos CDC Vaccine Ingredients, que se refiere a CDC por el Centro Control de Enfermedades, ingredientes de vacunas, vamos a ubicar entre los resultados este que dice excipientes, más adelante tabla 2. Acá está la lista de todas las vacunas con sus ingredientes y al comienzo una breve explicación sobre los antígenos, que son virus o bacterias, los conservantes para prevenir la contaminación, por ejemplo timerosal, que es mercurio muy neurotóxico, ayudantes para ayudar a estimular una respuesta inmune más fuerte, como el aluminio, también neurotóxico, estabilizadores como gelatinas, otras trazas residuales de materiales que se usaron durante el proceso de fabricación, como materiales de cultivo celular de fetos humanos abortados, riñón de mono, proteína de huevo, ingredientes utilizados para matar virus, por ejemplo formaldehído, y antibióticos para prevenir la contaminación por bacteria como neomicina. La siguiente tabla enumera todos los componentes de las diferentes vacunas. Hemos puesto color a alguno de estos para demostrar que se encuentran en la mayoría de las vacunas y son productos considerados tóxicos y o mutagénicos. Para comprobar la toxicidad del polisorbato 80, por ejemplo, tenemos que ir al sitio web de sciencelab.com. Una vez aquí, vamos al link Chemicals MSDS Listing y entramos al listado de la seguridad de los diferentes productos o materiales. De ahí nos vamos a la letra P y encontramos polisorbato 80. Hacemos clic para ver los estudios sobre este y en la sección de información sobre toxicidad dice: puede causar efectos reproductivos adversos basados en datos de pruebas con animales. Luego dice, puede causar cáncer basado en animales, puede afectar el material genético, o sea que es mutagénico, es decir, cambia la información genética. Y agrega, no se han encontrado estudios con humanos. Si alguien quiere más información, puede ir al sitio del Centro Nacional de Información Biotecnológica, con siglas NCBI, y en este sitio hay un link que va a PubMed. PubMed significa publicaciones médicas. En este caso tenemos el nombre del estudio, lo ponemos en el buscador del sitio de PubMed y acá está uno de los estudios que demuestra los problemas del polisorbato 80 que encontramos en el documento anterior sobre efectos reproductivos adversos. A continuación, el doctor Lawrence Palevsky, que fue jefe de la unidad de cuidados agudos pediátricos del Hospital Lenox Hill de la ciudad de Nueva York en Estados Unidos, nos explica lo siguiente.
People who are espousing what other people tell them. But if I presented my medical research around vaccines to my colleagues in medicine, they would be ashamed of themselves because they would never know that the aluminum in vaccines is not the same aluminum that you ingest or inhale. That the aluminum in vaccines is in such a structure that it can easily pass into the brain and bring with it viruses and bacteria. That the emulsifiers in vaccines, called polysorbate 80, are used by the pharmaceutical industry to get drugs to pass into the brain across the blood-brain barrier. But they're also in vaccines. And they also attach really strongly to aluminum. So as an adjuvant, aluminum has a kind of structure that binds tightly to the bacteria and the viruses. And then the polysorbate 80, the emulsifier, binds really tightly to the aluminum and to the bacteria and viruses, and can walk into the brain the way a ghost can go through a wall. The pharmaceutical industry uses particles like aluminum that are in vaccines to attach to drugs, to get them to go across the blood-brain barrier, because drugs don't go across the blood-brain barrier otherwise. And then the pharmaceutical industry uses an emulsifier, like polysorbate 80, to attach to the nanoparticle, that aluminum-type particle that is bound to the drug, to increase the entry of that drug into the brain 20-fold. That same technology that the pharmaceutical industry uses to enhance delivery of drugs across the blood-brain barrier into the brain is the same technology in vaccines. So, knowing that science, the question has to be asked, do vaccine materials enter the brain? No studies. Are vaccine materials supposed to get into the brain? No. If vaccine materials get into the brain, what happens? 1 in 6 children with neurodevelopmental disabilities, 1 in 50 with autism, 1 in 10 with ADHD, 1 in 20 below the age of 5 with seizures. Until proven otherwise. In 2011, there was a study published that surveyed over 91,000 children that showed that 54% of those children had at least one of 20 chronic illness. Now, here we are in 2016. I started medical school in 1983. These were not the data we were seeing.
Volvamos al calendario y recordemos las recomendaciones. Acá vemos que la vacuna contra la difteria, tétano y pertusis acelular, DTaP, tiene 4 dosis y se la recomienda para el bebé a los 2, 4, 6 y 15 meses de edad. Y podemos ver entre sus ingredientes que tiene polisorbato 80, aluminio, formaldehído y células de fetos humanos abortados y de monos. Luego, a los 6 meses de edad, recomiendan cada año y a madres embarazadas la vacuna contra la influenza o gripe, que tiene 25 microgramos de timerosal, que es etilmercurio. Esta cantidad de timerosal supera varias veces los niveles permisibles y es extremadamente tóxico. Para no confundirnos, tenemos que recordar que el timerosal es etilmercurio y no metilmercurio. La diferencia es muy importante porque se quiere comparar cuando en realidad el etilmercurio es mucho más perjudicial. Veamos esta breve entrevista realizada al Dr. Tom Burbacher de la Universidad de Seattle.
Dr. Tom Burbacher performed an experiment on monkeys to compare injecting thimerosal to eating methylmercury.
Whatever process that's going on in terms of moving the mercury from the body to the brain is actually happening a little bit faster with the thimerosal.
Both ethyl and methyl can wash in and out of the brain, but over time they convert into an inorganic form, which locks into the brain and accumulates. And ethyl would do this much faster than methyl.
The first time that we looked at the thimerosal animals, the majority of it was already inorganic.
In the end, the thimerosal-exposed monkeys had twice the amount of inorganic mercury locked in their brain.
The 0.1 microgram per kilogram per day is not a good standard for ethyl mercury.
Vaccines should be totally safe. You shouldn't be injecting anything into a baby that is toxic and known to be toxic, that increases the health risks to that baby. And that's what we've been doing. We're injecting aluminum and mercury, ethyl mercury, into these children. And in some of the vaccines, we've seen that they have component parts of DNA from pigs and bovine and chickens, etc., that are also being injected. That's not safe to do that.
This morning, the autism rate in this country is 30% higher than previously thought. That's according to the CDC, and it puts the number of American kids and teenagers with autism at 1.2 million. Jim Axelrod is here now with the new findings. Jim, good morning.
Good morning. 1 out of every 68 children in the United States is now believed to be somewhere on the autism spectrum. That's up from 1 out of 88 just 2 years ago.
And I'm trying to prevent infant deaths and sicknesses caused by an injection of mercury into their bodies. Autism didn't exist before we started using organic mercury in vaccines and other biological systems. It went up in all 50 states at the same time. At the same time, we started the CDC mandated vaccine program. There has to be an environmental toxin, because we have established there is no genetic cause of autism. It didn't exist, and you don't have genetics cause epidemics. You can have a genetic susceptibility to a toxin, introduce a new toxin, and you can cause an epidemic. And I think that's where the autism thing is. These are genetically susceptible people being exposed to a new toxin, because the average age of diagnosis is about 4.5 years of age. So they have to be exposed quite early in life. The vaccine program fits that. And you have to say it has to be something that affects boys more than girls. Well, the thimerosal, there's no doubt about it. Mercury affects the male species much more than it does the female species. And then number 4, you have to look at all the biological effects. And I would say that if you think the vaccines are so safe, then explain to me why this country that has the highest vaccine and the earliest vaccine rate in the world has such a high level of infant mortality. Much higher than those who give much less vaccines and you give them a lot later in the child's life. You know, this is something that all the people in the immunology or vaccine program fight totally against, and that's to look at the effect of the rate of autism in the non-vaccinated population, the non-thimerosal exposed population, versus that of an exposed population. They will do anything to avoid doing that and make any excuse. What he's saying is absurd. It's easy to go through and get a large general population of people that have not been vaccinated and look at them and look at the autism rate in that group. Our government has that data. They can definitely obtain it. But the vaccine manufacturers and the people who make money off of giving vaccines do not want this looked at, because what it does and will show and has shown is that the people who do not get vaccinated or do not get exposed to thimerosal do not have nearly the rate of autism as do those that do. But then when you compare it, when you look at thimerosal and you say, what level of thimerosal is toxic in a baby that starts causing toxic issues, and how close to that level do you get when you give a vaccine, you realize that the dose is quite toxic that you're injecting into these children. We have done studies, and these are now published in some of the best toxicological journals in the world. And I would tell you that since then I have read a study where they looked at homeschooled children, an epidemiological study where they sent out a form asking them to look at if their children were vaccinated and if any of them had any medical problems such as autism, pneumonia, etc. And the take-home lesson from that study was that the unvaccinated children were much more healthy than the vaccinated children. And they had a much lower rate of autism and asthma, etc. And that the vaccinated children were much more likely to get sick later on in life with pneumonia. They had more hospital calls, etc.
Here is the neurite of a live neuron isolated from snail brain tissue, displaying linear growth due to growth cone activity. It is important to note that growth cones in all animal species, ranging from snails to humans, have identical structural and behavioral characteristics and use proteins of virtually identical composition. In this experiment, neurons also isolated from snail brain tissue were grown in culture for several days, after which very low concentrations of mercury were added to the culture medium for 20 minutes. Over the next 30 minutes, the neurite membrane underwent rapid degeneration, leaving behind the denuded neurofibrils seen here. In contrast, other heavy metals added at this same concentration, such as aluminum, lead, cadmium, and manganese, did not produce this effect. These new findings reveal important visual evidence as to how mercury causes neurodegeneration. More importantly, this study provides the first direct evidence that low-level mercury exposure is indeed a precipitating factor that can initiate this neurodegenerative process within the brain.
I mean, that study in Calgary came off of the studies. I worked with those guys early on, showing that mercury added to normal human brain tissue, would induce the same biochemical abnormalities found in Alzheimer's disease brain. This means that exposure to mercury can have a dramatic effect on somebody who's very prone to getting Alzheimer's disease, whatever the cause.
For years now, parents have wondered if vaccines are linked to conditions like autism and ADD. Government officials and some scientists say there is no connection, and they're often backed by independent experts. But just how independent are they? You may be surprised at what Cheryl Atkinson found when she set out to follow the money.
They're some of the most trusted voices in the defense of vaccine safety. The American Academy of Pediatrics, Every Child by Two, and pediatrician Dr. Paul Offit. But CBS News has found these three have something more in common.
Polio number 2.
Strong financial ties to the industry whose products they promote and defend. The vaccine industry gives millions to the Academy of Pediatrics for conferences, grants, medical education classes, even help pay to build their headquarters. The totals are kept secret, but public documents reveal bits and pieces. $342,000 was given to the Academy by Wyeth, maker of the pneumococcal vaccine, for a community grant program. $433,000 was contributed to the Academy by Merck, the same year the Academy endorsed Merck's HPV vaccine. Another top donor, Sanofi Aventis, maker of 17 vaccines, and a new 5-in-1 combo shot just added to the childhood vaccine schedule last month. Then there's Dr. Paul Offit, perhaps the most widely quoted defender of vaccine safety. He's gone so far as to say babies can theoretically tolerate, quote, 10,000 vaccines at once. This is how Offit described himself in a previous interview.
I'm the chief of infectious diseases at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia and a professor of pediatrics at Penn's Medical School.
Dr. Offit was not willing to be interviewed on this subject, but like others in our investigation, he has strong industry ties. In fact, he's a vaccine industry insider. Dr. Offit holds a $1.5 million research chair at Children's Hospital funded by Merck. He holds the patent on an anti-diarrhea vaccine he developed with Merck, Rototec, which has prevented thousands of hospitalizations in the U.S. And future royalties for the vaccine were just sold for $182 million cash. Dr. Offit's share of vaccine profits, unknown.
Este es el sitio web de la Agencia de Protección del Ambiente en Estados Unidos, EPA, y acá podemos ver las cantidades permisibles de mercurio en agua. Las medidas están en miligramos por litro. Los miligramos por litro, que son equivalentes a partes por millón. Acá vemos que para el mercurio el límite es 0.002 miligramos por litro. Por otro lado, en el sitio del Proyecto Mundial sobre Mercurio, liderado por Robert Kennedy Jr., que tiene una trayectoria impecable denunciando la corrupción de parte de los miembros del Congreso de Estados Unidos e informando sobre las irregularidades de la cantidad de mercurio que se producen, su libro tiene un resumen de cientos de publicaciones revisadas por expertos científicos que demuestran la toxicidad del timerosal. El libro también analiza los estudios fraudulentos realizados por el Centro de Control de Enfermedades, CDC, en donde queda en evidencia que responden a las empresas farmacéuticas. Este libro, entre otros problemas, demuestra que las vacunas contra la gripe con timerosal tienen 250 veces el nivel de mercurio de lo que la EPA clasifica como desechos peligrosos. Veamos 3 estudios publicados en publicaciones médicas sobre la vacuna contra la gripe o influenza. Un estudio realizado en 45.231 mujeres, publicados en JAMA Pediatrics, identificó un mayor riesgo de diagnóstico de trastorno del espectro autista, TEA, en los hijos de madres que recibieron la vacuna contra la gripe durante el primer trimestre del embarazo. Otro reciente estudio del Centro de Control de Enfermedades demostró que las mujeres vacunadas contra la influenza tuvieron hasta 7.7 veces más riesgo de tener abortos involuntarios después de recibir esta vacuna. Y un tercer estudio de la Universidad de Ohio analizó la inyección de la vacuna contra la gripe en mujeres embarazadas y encontró un aumento de la circulación de los marcadores inflamatorios inmunes que diversos estudios en la literatura médica expresan claramente que los trastornos esquizofrénicos, psiquiátricos y autismo tienen como precursores la inflamación en el útero. Volviendo a los ingredientes, estos son los de la vacuna contra sarampión, paperas y rubiola, MMR. Vemos que utilizan líneas de células de fetos humanos abortados. Esta es la lista de vacunas que utilizan estos ingredientes, es decir, vacunas que utilizan líneas de células fetales humanas. La doctora Deicher tiene un doctorado en fisiología molecular y celular en la Universidad de Stanford y nos alerta de los problemas con este tipo de ingredientes.
There is clearly what's called a change point, or a very steep rise in the UK in autism in 1988. And a rise like that is always due to some environmental factor. And what had happened in 1988 was they switched from using animal cells to using the human fetal cells. And what we found was that every time a fetal vaccine is introduced, autism rates go up, and they take sharp increases at those years. And in the case of the human manufactured vaccines, I realized that there could be very high levels of the DNA from that fetus, which would be made in a natural state. And those DNA fragments carry very concerning dangers to children who are injected with them. They have the potential to trigger autoimmunity, and they have the trigger to insert into the child's genome and cause mutations. And this information comes from the fields of autoimmunity, immunology, and gene therapy. And there's a huge body of literature that demonstrates how dangerous it is to have those contaminants in the vaccines that we give our children. For whatever reason, they have given the fetal cells a pass without doing any safety studies. It's very egregious. And they do this by getting expert opinions. And the expert opinions will say, well, we don't think that we'll see mutation, insertional mutagenesis, until we treat 1 trillion children, right? Just by doing calculations in their heads. When they did that gene therapy study, they had experts sit around and they said, okay, this could be dangerous. We could cause insertional mutagenesis. But they thought that the risk was 1 in 1 trillion. Well, the actual outcome was that 4 of 9 boys developed cancer. So the intellectual, the expert opinions have no relationship to real life risk, and yet they have never done a safety study. The MMR2 that was introduced into the United States in 1980 and into the UK in 1988 is contaminated with fetal DNA fragments and retroviral fragments at levels 100-fold above the limits that are recommended by the World Health Organization and the FDA. The chickenpox vaccine that was approved in 1995, and children began to be vaccinated with it who were born in 1992. These children are vaccinated after their birth. That is very, very heavily contaminated. The DNA double-strand fragments measured by Merck are 2 times the level of the chickenpox DNA vaccine. So it's amazing that they would think that the active component, which has activity, right, we have contaminants 2 times that level, that they would have no impact. And then the hepatitis A was introduced in varied states in about 1995, and then more uniformly in the recommendations in 2001. And all hepatitis A containing vaccines are manufactured using fetal cells and are contaminated with the fetal DNA. And then what I think is most curious, and every time one of those vaccines is introduced, there's a very steep increase in autistic disorder. We only look at autistic disorder, and that's because it's the most severe form. And the diagnostic, the DSM criteria, has not changed over decades. So no one can argue that it's relaxed diagnosis contributing to this. So we look only at autistic disorder. And that takes a very steep rise every time a fetal vaccine is introduced. And then in 2008, we introduced the polio vaccine in Pentacell. And that vaccine is given to our children at 2, 4, and 6 months of age. And if you listen to the autism experts out there, they all talk in recent years, the last 6, 7 years, of how much better they're getting at diagnosis. And diagnosis used to be, or onset of symptoms, about 18 months of age, right? Right after they got their MMR and their chickenpox. And now it's come down to about 8 to 9 months of age, even lower. And the experts all say, well, we're just better at diagnosing. If a parent had a child who was developing normally, talking and cooing 20 years ago, and suddenly stopped, they wouldn't wait till their child was 18 months old to actually bring the symptoms to their pediatrician. I think what we're doing is we are giving this to our children at younger and younger ages by injecting them with these fetal manufactured vaccines.
Veamos ahora 6 prospectos de diferentes marcas de la vacuna contra difteria, tétano y tos convulsa o pertussis, DTaP, recomendada para embarazadas en Argentina, como ninguna de estas tiene estudios realizados en mujeres embarazadas y todas exceden los límites permisibles de cantidad de aluminio. Si vamos nuevamente al sitio de fda.gov de la Administración de Alimentos y Medicamentos de Estados Unidos, más abajo hacemos clic sobre Investigaciones Criminales y luego clic sobre Noticias Publicadas, y en esta página en el buscador ponemos Glaxo, nos vamos a encontrar con algo de la historia criminal de este laboratorio, como por ejemplo 2 de julio de 2012, GlaxoSmithKline se declara culpable y pagará $3.000 millones por fraude y falta de información de seguridad. 26 de octubre del 2010, GlaxoSmithKline se declara culpable y pagará 750 millones por deficiencias de fabricación en la planta de Puerto Rico. Hagamos una búsqueda poniendo Merck, que es otro laboratorio. 19 de abril del 2012, la compañía farmacéutica estadounidense Merck Sharp Dohme, sentenciada por la promoción ilegal de Vioxx. 22 de noviembre del 2011, el Departamento de Justicia anuncia una resolución civil y penal de casi 1.000 millones con Merck Sharp Dohme por falsa publicidad. Alguien puede pensar que los controles funcionan, pero no está tomando en cuenta que tuvieron que haber más de 100.000 infartos con 30.000 muertos para que finalmente, y gracias a denuncias internas, se pudo llevar a juicio a estos laboratorios. La gente confía en los laboratorios con una fe ciega y deja que vacunen a sus hijos a causa de campañas de miedo sembradas por estos laboratorios y complicidad con los medios, cuando previamente han llegado a un acuerdo económico con el Congreso del país en cuestión para obligar a la gente a vacunarse. Los laboratorios Merck y Glaxo son los que ahora han logrado que gobiernos impongan su vacuna contra el virus de papiloma HPV, que está dejando a miles de personas con daños graves o muertas. La gente ya se ha olvidado el caso de Merck con su producto contra dolores de artritis, Vioxx, que causaba un aumento alarmante de ataques cardíacos, y luego de una ardua investigación en los archivos de medicina interna se descubrió que Merck retuvo los datos durante 3 años, datos que demostraban que Vioxx causaba paros cardíacos y lo ocultaron para maximizar ganancias. Vioxx mató a más de 30.000 personas.
FDA scientist David Graham testified that he estimates Vioxx caused more than 100,000 heart attacks, 30 to 40% of them fatal. But Graham told members of the Senate Finance Committee that his FDA superiors ridiculed him and insisted on changes.
Dr. Wayne, I was pressured to change my conclusions and recommendations. One drug safety manager recommended that I should be barred from presenting the poster at the meeting, and also noted that Merck needed to know our study results.
Graham offered a blistering condemnation of the FDA's drug safety program, saying that the system is broken and often overlooks the dangers of drug side effects.
The FDA, as currently configured, is incapable of protecting America against another Vioxx.
These legal documents spell out what Merck knew and when they knew it. In clinical trials during the late 90s, the company tested whether their anti-inflammatory drug Vioxx could prevent cognitive decline in patients with Alzheimer's disease. Life-threatening risks were documented but were never reported to the FDA or the public.
The company found a 3-fold increased risk in mortality and failed to see a safety signal. By scientific standards, this is a major safety issue.
Dr. Bruce Posady and colleagues at the University of Washington reviewed numerous legal documents from litigation involving Merck and Vioxx. In a published report in 2004, Merck reported that Vioxx is, quote, generally well tolerated by the elderly patients in our study. But this internal company document tells a different story. It reveals Merck knew about an increased risk in mortality associated with Vioxx, and they knew this in 2001.
If these findings had been made public back in 2001, many fewer people would have taken Vioxx, and because it is associated with an increased risk of mortality and of heart attacks, many fewer people would have been harmed.
Las vacunas pueden contagiar. Lo podemos leer en el prospecto de la vacuna MMR2 de Laboratorios Merck, que dice: se ha producido la excreción de pequeñas cantidades de virus de la rubiola atenuado vivo de la nariz o la garganta en la mayoría de las personas susceptibles de 7 a 28 días después de la vacunación. Más adelante dice: estudios recientes han demostrado que las mujeres posparto lactantes vacunadas con vacuna viva atenuada contra la rubiola pueden secretar el virus en la leche materna y lo transmite a los lactantes. La guía del paciente del Hospital Johns Hopkins advierte a los inmunocomprometidos de evitar el contacto con los niños que están vacunados recientemente con vacunas con virus como la varicela, el sarampión, la rubiola, la gripe, la polio o la viruela. Los recientemente vacunados no pueden hacer visitas a los inmunocomprometidos porque los pueden contagiar.
We saw the major drops in death from the many infectious diseases, say starting at 1900, when they started keeping records, 1900, 1910, until about 1940, 1950. Those rates of those diseases dropped dramatically. Before the vaccines were ever introduced, they dropped over 90%. And so the bigger drops were before the vaccines were produced.
This chart of deaths from pertussis, or whooping cough, is from Vital and Historical Statistics of the United States from 1900 to 1968. It shows a dramatic decline in deaths from pertussis well before the pertussis vaccine came into widespread use in the 1940s. The death rate falls from as many as 17 per 100,000 in 1918 to less than 2 before the vaccine came into widespread use in the late 1940s. This chart of New York City mortality rates tracks infectious disease from 1880 to 1911. It shows that deaths from diphtheria, the blue line, fell precipitously from a high of 175 deaths per 100,000 in 1882 to less than 25 by 1911. Deaths from the croup also declined dramatically during the same period, yet there is no vaccine for the croup. This chart of United States mortality rates shows that continued deaths from diphtheria had fallen below 15 per 100,000 before the vaccine was introduced in 1920. Pertussis fell from as many as 16 per 100,000 in 1907 and 17 per 100,000 in 1919 to fewer than 1 by 1951. The vaccine was in use from the 1940s, but sizable drops occurred well before it was introduced. Measles, the green line, fell to less than 2 per 100,000 in 1940, a full 25 years before the vaccine was first introduced in 1963. Typhoid, the dark blue line, and scarlet fever, the red line, also declined dramatically over the same period without a vaccine. This graph shows the decline of all 5 diseases. Some declined before a vaccine, others declined without one.
Well, you know, when you talk about how much money the vaccine program costs the American public, we're spending billions of dollars on vaccines. And maybe we would be better served if we took that billions of dollars and spent it on hygiene and good food, and maybe the availability of antibiotics in certain areas. Because I think antibiotics and hygiene have done a lot more to reduce the amount of infectious diseases in this country than have the vaccine program.